Okay, this is the first middle of the month video, but since my schedule got all thrown out of whack, this is coming out on the third week of the month. But anyway, I posted a poll in my Instagram story, and the top choice for my first video was to make a buying guide for film cameras. So welcome to 5 Steps to Buy Your First Film Camera, Overly Complicated 2020 edition. Okay, so I'll give you the rationale for this guide first, and then after that I'll give you 2 little alternative approaches that should be easier and quicker. And then after that, I'll give you the 5 steps for how to buy your first film camera. Step 1 is list your needs, i.e. what kind of photography are you going to be doing. Step 2 is find types of cameras that meet your needs. Step 3, that's choose a camera model and the lenses that you're going to need. Step 4, find the camera and buy it. And step 5, test your camera to make sure it's working right and everything. So, first, let's see, the rationale for my guide. Okay, we're basically in a new era of the film camera market. So we went through a period in the mid 2000s to about the mid 10s where film camera prices were undervalued. And then around 2017, we started entering a period where prices started to increase a lot. And now we're basically seeing a bubble in the prices of a lot of film cameras. And also, another thing is that, like, film cameras, they're getting pretty darn old. Electronic cameras are, not as reliable as they used to be. We're running into a lot of repairability problems that are just going to get more common and harder to deal with. So because of the high demand currently and dwindling supply, I don't think it's helpful to make specific recommendations like of the usual suspects, like Leica M6s and Canon AE1s and Mamiya RZ67s and Pentax 67s and all that sort of thing. So in my guide, I'm going to help you find underrated, underpriced, not very well-known cameras that are flying under the radar. Another good thing that's happening these days is that new companies are starting up to make film cameras in different ways, mostly in medium and large format. So that's a really good sign, since most film photographers in the day, they couldn't afford those formats, and they were kind of stuck with 35mm or something like that. Okay, and then another thing about my guide is this audience. Okay, so it's mainly aimed at photographers, not camera collectors. There are some things that collectors read about that will be useful to someone who's gonna, take photos with their cameras. But if you're if you're looking to be a serious camera collector, you're going to be doing a whole lot of different things. So this is not the guide for you. Okay, this guide is primarily targeted at people looking for their first camera. You can be a completely new photographer, or you can be an experienced photographer who's only used digital. Like maybe you're a member of Generation Z who only grew up with digital cameras, and you're trying to get into film photography for the first time. Or maybe you're a baby boomer who is, picking up photography as a new hobby. Either way, this guy's going to help you out. And also, I'm assuming that you're looking for a good value, that you're on a specific budget and you don't want to spend too much money. So, looking for something that's reliable, it's a good value, and that's repairable in the long term, and it's something that you can grow with. So there are going to be 3 things that I want you to keep in mind during this video. Number 1 is that gear acquisition syndrome is unreliable. You can't trust it because sometimes it'll lead you to make a good purchase and sometimes it'll lead you to a bad purchase. There's no real way to predict what's going to happen. So you should try to just put that aside and ignore it. Like, there's a certain canon of what the best cameras are, but even the best cameras can let you down, and getting the best camera does not mean that you avoid all of the technical barriers that are getting in the way of taking good photos or anything, or that sort of thing. Like, don't believe the hype. This whole thing about getting the best camera out there, that's sort of premised on instilling insecurities about equipment that are just completely fallacious. Like they're not real. And also, number 2, another thing to keep in mind is that I'm not going to recommend any specific cameras. That's all up to you. So if you're expecting me to list a bunch of cameras that I will recommend to you, you're not going to get it in this video. And number 3, if you are really getting your first camera, keep in mind that you're probably going to get more cameras. It's not the last camera you're going to get, so you shouldn't stress out too much about it. It's a lot to think about, lots of things to flesh out and consider, but you can make a mistake and it's not going to be the end of the world. The important thing is to get your foot in the door. Okay. So now I'm going to give you some alternative approaches to my way too complicated process. Okay, so the first alternative approach is to buy a camera at random. You can open yourself up to chance, trial and error. The whole process is enjoyable. The whole playing around with things, seeing what works for you. You can always sell things, and you might even make some money off of it. You're probably not going to lose money off of cameras right now. But just decide your budget, skip down to step 4, go get a camera and have fun. And then the second approach is just to find a camera that you like as an object. I really like looking for good-looking cameras, nicely designed cameras. Something superficial like that helps reduce the number of choices a lot. So I would say get something you like the design, the look and feel of, and you'll like to use it, and it'll be more fun. Cameras generally are pretty versatile, even though they sort of have some limitations here and there. But you don't really need the absolute best or most versatile camera or whatever, because, cameras are cameras. They can do a lot of things. So you don't need the absolute best, whatever optimal solution choice, to do good work. Okay, so anyway, that said, step 1, list your needs and preferences, i.e. what kind of photography are you going to be doing? If you're a beginner, you might not be sure. And there's a little bit sort of like Alice in Wonderland in how, if you don't know where you're gonna go, you can go any direction you want, and it doesn't matter what you start out with, just as long as you get going. You can always fall back on people's recommendation for a manual, metal, and mechanical SLR, 35mm SLR. That's how I started, and it was pretty good, but I'm not going to say that it's the only way you can go. If you're going to do, I don't know, if you have some inkling that you want to do something more like candid photography, documentary, street type photography, then I would say don't get an SLR. Get yourself a rangefinder, or one of the fixed lens compact rangefinders, or a point and shoot camera or something like that. But if you have any sort of inkling about what kind of photography you want to do, you should go through the whole process that I'm going to lay out. Also, okay, as far as lists, figuring out what your list of needs are, it's probably also a good idea to find photos and photographers that you like and that you want to do. So go to the bookstore, go to the library, look around on the internet, find stuff that you respond to, list out the things that matter to you, and then look for photos about those topics. So maybe you really care about the environment. So maybe you're an environmentalist and you like looking at landscape photography. Maybe you end up liking Ansel Adams's photographs, or maybe you're more into the whole Robert Adams, New Topographics, John Gossage school of landscape photography. Do your research on the kinds of photography that are out there, and then find out what kind of equipment they use, and that'll help you get an idea of what kind of camera you can get. Maybe you don't shoot 35mm SLRs when you start. Maybe you just jump all the way into large format or medium format. Who knows? Anyway, okay. So if you're experienced photographer who's only shot digital. Maybe you want to just get the analog version of that. Or maybe you want a film camera to complement your professional cameras. So something for personal projects, like a lot of people get Leicas, a lot of people get medium format cameras. I don't know. If you're an experienced photographer, you're probably going to be more familiar with the different types of cameras out that are available, and and how they relate to different types of photography. But you might not know like a whole lot of stuff anyway. And I'll put lots of resources and stuff that you'll still find helpful. So anyway, let's see. So the needs and preferences, those break down into different items. So basically, number one, price. That's pretty easy, explanatory. Figure out how much you want to spend. There's definitely going to be an option for you in most categories of camera types and stuff like that. So don't get locked into the whole smaller is cheaper or whatever. So you can probably afford large format even if you don't have a lot of money. Let's see. So number two, portability, like the size, weight, whether you need a tripod or not, what kind of bag you're going to be carrying this around in, or camera strap you're going to need. That depends a lot on the kind of photography that you're going to end up doing, and also your age. Like when people get older, they just tend to prefer lighter and smaller cameras, so that's another thing to keep in mind. Another factor that you should put on your list is what your desired output is going to be. Are you going to be printing things? If so, are you going to be printing small prints like 5x7s, or are you going to be printing something larger like 11x14, or even like 20x24? Are you going to be putting things mostly in books? Are you going to be doing gallery shows? What's the print quality that you want? What's for the aesthetic that you're going? Do you want something grainy? Or do you want something with very smooth tones? Or are you just gonna just display things on computer screens? So yeah, plan out what kind of output you want in the end. Next category of needs is what your shooting style is going to be. So are you going to be shooting fast or slow? One analogy that William Eggleston gave was whether you're going to be shooting your camera like a shotgun, or whether you're going to be shooting it like a rifle. Are you going to be really precise, or imprecisely? Are you going to be like more casual about it, or very, very methodical? That's going to affect things like what kind of focusing system you want to use, what kind of metering you want, whether you can get along with a camera that doesn't have a built-in meter, and all sorts of things like that. Also the motor wind. Are you going to be okay with manual film advance, or do you really need something that can shoot a lot of frames per second? Another factor in the shooting style is what kind of light you're going to be shooting in. You might already know whether you're going to be shooting a lot in low light, or if you're going to be shooting in so-called good light. Maybe the style of photography you want to do involves a lot of strobes and flash, or maybe it's just, natural available light. That's going to affect what kind of format you're going to use to a certain extent, and also what kind of flash sync you're going to need. And then another factor in shooting style is your relationship to your subject. So that'll affect things like how loud your shutter can be, to be practical, and also the form factor of the camera, whether it's an SLR, a rangefinder, or a waist level viewfinder, or if you're going to be shooting something like a view camera mounted on a tripod. So all these different cameras, they sort of affect the way other people relate to you, and it's something you really need to think about. Okay, let's see. Another factor in your needs is your eyesight. That's a pretty basic one. So, do you wear glasses, or is your vision pretty much fine? If you wear eyeglasses, you're gonna look for cameras that have better eye relief, and whether you can put diopters in the viewfinder or if it's built in, and it's also going to affect what kind of focusing system you use. Autofocus can be really helpful for some people, and rangefinders might be easier for you to use compared to ground glasses and SLRs or TLRs or view cameras and things like that. Also, another factor you're going to want to keep in mind are what kind of optical characteristics appeal to you. So, do you want an antique look, or do you want sort of like a more classic look, or do you want a modern look? That can affect things like what kind of lens mount you end up getting, and also, to a certain extent, what camera system you end up choosing. Things like contrast, flare, bokeh, certain aberrations that might be important to the kind of photography you do. That's all part of the whole optical characteristics list that you want to make out. And there's also just your superficial aesthetic taste for cameras. So that's related to how much money you want to spend, and just what kind of shopping habits you have, whether you like to get the most expensive thing, so you only buy once, cry once, so spend as much money as you can on something, or whether you're like you prefer getting something less expensive that you can easily afford, or whether you like getting something really dirt cheap and maybe you don't mind if it breaks or if it doesn't quite work properly. A lot of toy cameras have flight leaks that are all part of the fun. So maybe you're okay with a camera whose aperture is stuck wide open and that has light leaks, and what else? what else can go wrong with the camera where you can still take the camera. But that's sort of lo-fi aesthetic that'll affect what kind of camera you get, because if you get too good of a camera, you're not going to be able to get those special effects. So that's a bit of a wacky need to put down, but it's a valid one that you should put on your list. Okay, so step 2, find the types of cameras that meet your needs. It's not just one type of camera, probably. It could be a bunch of different things. So list out the desired results and the process of taking photos that you want to do. So the really easy way to do that is, to go back to the photographers that you like and find out what kind of cameras they used. They're experienced photographers. They've already figured out what works best for their process, what kind of results they want to get. So you can do Google searches to find out what cameras they used, and you can also read exhibition catalogs. Those often have details about what camera they used, either in an interview or some sort of essay about the photographer. You should keep in mind that what works for them, it might not work for you. Like the model of the camera they get, or even the type of camera they use, you might not actually end up liking it. So that's just one caveat to watch out for. Let's see. Okay, the next step in step 2 is to familiarize yourself with all the types of cameras. So easy ways to do that are to browse camera collector websites and wikis, or to browse the cameras on eBay. That'll give you a general overview, although there are some more obscure types of cameras that might be harder to learn about. Lots of people don't know about Jumel cameras or falling plate cameras, but they used to be pretty common in the late 1800s, early 1900s. The best sources to find all about all the different types of cameras, I'll link those in the description below, so it's easy for you to reference. It's also nice to actually handle the different types of cameras. So go to the camera shows in your area, go to the camera shops in your area. Don't just look at the videos on YouTube. Even though I made all those videos about how the cameras handle and feel, it really is nice to be able to try them out in person. You can also go to photo walks and meetups like Beers and Cameras or Photo Alliance. People bring their cameras and you can just ask them to play around with it for a little bit. Okay. Going further down with the familiarizing yourself with the different types of cameras, you might want to look into the history of cameras. This is where the whole the knowledge that antiquarians that the camera collector people have built up, that might be useful, because you can learn about kinds of cameras that aren't really used anymore, but they're still available and they still work. So you can also learn how different types of cameras were designed for different purpose, different types of photography and ways of photographing. And you can see how to match up the cameras to your needs. So, you can also see how examples of how one type of camera was used for different purposes over history, like TLRs. Those used to be used for reportage, and then now they're mostly used for portraits and slower photography. I mentioned that in the video about Rolleiflexes. You can also learn about how different types of cameras were used for the same genre of photography. Like photojournalism used to be done with speed graphics, and then they moved on to Rolleiflexes, and then they moved on to 35mm SLRs and rangefinders. So that gives you a sense of the range of different camera types that you can use for the kind of photography you want to do. And also, you should also think about how you can go against the grain. So think about using a kind of camera that hasn't really been used for the kind of photography you want to do. That might be creatively useful too. Like I'm sure, I remember reading how Sally Mann wanted to use her 8x10 camera in the way that people used 35mm cameras, and she did a body of work in that style, and it was pretty cool. So let's see. I think Joel Meyer said something similar. How he shoots large format with the mind of a 35mm rangefinder street photographer. So yeah, going against grain, that could be good. Okay, so step 3: choose a camera model, keeping in mind the kinds of lenses that you're gonna need. So, like I said in the intro, there's no such thing as the one best camera for you. It's not like you're being a romantic and looking for your soulmate. There are a lot of cameras that could meet your needs perfectly well, and you don't have to stress out about finding out the one true camera. Also, a lot of people, they say that like people, they might buy a really expensive camera like a Leica or a Hasselblad or Rolleiflex or something, and then they'll say something like, "Now I can't blame the camera for my bad photos." That's kind of like one of the more cringeworthy things people can say, because really expensive cameras often have the same functionality as less expensive cameras. Sometimes they have even less functionality than less expensive cameras. So it just makes no sense to really say that. Yeah, it's one of the more irritating things. So just keep in mind that price doesn't necessarily correlate with functionality. So just disabuse of yourself of that idea when you're picking a camera model. So let's see. So also one thing to keep in mind: if you can't get on with a camera for the kind of photography you end up doing, that actually probably means that's the problem with the type of camera, not that specific model. So a lot of people, they'll say like, "I don't like this particular 35mm SLR," and they say, "Which other 35mm SLR would you recommend?" Yeah, don't do that. You're probably having troubles with the type of camera. Go to a different category. So let's see. What else? What's the next? Okay. When you're picking a model, you want to think about the system, especially the lens lineup. Like, depending on the genre of photography you do, that's probably gonna affect the lens, the focal length that you're gonna need. So, just as an example, maybe you want to use, maybe you want to do sort of general photography with 35mm SLR. That's the kind if that's the kind of camera you want to use. And let's say you want to use a 35mm lens that's not too big and not too heavy. You might want to think about, whether it has an f2 lens in the lineup, because not all brands have that. Like Contact's Yashica mount, that they don't have a 35mm f2. Other brands might have tilt shift lenses that you want, or macro lenses that you want, and other brands might not. So generally speaking, most systems are pretty complete, but there might be like gaps here and there that might like bite you in the ass later. That might like cause problems later on. So double check to make sure that they have the lenses that you need. Same thing with all the accessories. So as far as choosing a system, there are camera collector websites and reference sources on Wiki. The manuals and the brochures, those are pretty much generally available on the internet. You'll definitely want to look through those to pick which system you want to you end up choosing. And it's also good to consult internet forums and camera reviews. So I'll link to all the main internet forums for different the general ones, and then the more specific brand specific forums. People can always like recommend something for you there, but it's good to be really specific about your needs, because generally speaking, they're gonna recommend what they bought. It's sort of like a competition to see who will end up giving the recommendation that the original poster ends up getting. They're not necessarily camera salesmen who are gonna guide you through the process to find what's good for you necessarily. So that's like a big grain of salt that you need to prepare to deal with when you go to an internet forum. Always be really, really detailed and specific about your needs. So, like, people don't end up recommending things completely irrelevant. Let's see. So, what else? Okay. Another thing you want to think about when you're choosing a camera system is how repairable it is. So some brands have less service options than others. You can find that sort of thing out on forums too. There is probably going to be a thread somewhere on the internet discussing what good repairmen there are for a certain camera brand or camera model, and their experiences with specific camera repairmen. So there will always be specialists in that brand, and I'll links a bunch of the ones that I know in the description. But you can always find out if repair services are available for that system or camera in your area, because you don't want to be you don't necessarily want to send it to a whole different continent just to get your camera repaired. It's good to have local support that's faster and has faster turnaround times, and just to be able to support the camera community in your area. Also, another thing that's happening more these days is that services won't be available for certain things. So if you're thinking about a sophisticated electronic camera, like Minolta TC1s, you might not be able to get that repaired that easily. Same thing with some older equipment like Hasselblad C lenses. Some parts for those are no longer available, although I think David Otis can still service them to a certain extent. So there's always model-specific caveats here and there that you need to check beforehand to see if you can get them repaired. It's like getting a car. Some things you can get done pretty easily, some things you can't. Let's see. Oh, one thing I should mention, that this is gonna have this whole repairability thing, that's gonna depend a lot on your risk aversion and how much money you have to deal with the repairs. So keep that in mind before you choose a system. And I would definitely say to prefer mechanical cameras whenever possible, because the kinds of repairs that you can't get done on electronic cameras are getting worse, of course. And if a certain repair can be done on an electronic camera, they're probably going to be less reliable over time than they used to be, because they used to be able to replace parts in full. But going forward, they're probably going to have to develop new skill sets to repair things at the component level. They haven't quite made that transition yet, but that's what they're probably going to have to do to keep a lot of different camera models working. And that sort of repair is probably not as reliable over time as the way of just replacing the whole electronic component. So yeah, if you can, go for a mechanical camera as much as you can. Let's see. I'll make another video about that in the future. So that's something to look forward to. Okay. Also, if you are gonna get one of the riskier electronic cameras, make sure you have the budget to get two of them. Like, you want a backup body that's fully functioning. So if one goes out and you can't get it repaired, you can just switch over to the one that's still working. Okay, so let's see. Did I go over everything for picking a camera model and system and all that sort of whatever? I can't remember everything. Okay, so step 4. Find the camera and buy it. So you can buy cameras in all sorts of places. Number 1, of course, is always eBay. It's always good to have saved searches on eBay. This might, end up being a good or a bad thing, because if you put lots of things in your saved searches, like, you might end up buying things opportunistically when they come up for sale. You might spend more money than you really planned on, but it also helps a lot for finding things specific that you really want. So that's helpful for getting rare items. Also, let's see. Aside from eBay, one other thing that I should mention about eBay: always snipe. That's when all the action happens. It makes no sense to just bid incrementally beforehand. It's like pointless. All you're going to do is drive up the final price in the end. Let's see. Other things about eBay. Okay, so you all know that the Japan-based sellers who have the most inaccurate condition ratings ever. So if you want something that's comparable to KEH's like new, you're gonna want to look for unused on eBay, and then if you want something mint at KEH, you're gonna want to look for something that's like top mint on eBay. If you want something EX plus, you're gonna want something like mint condition, and then just the same staggered all the way down the list. I would not get anything rated excellent plus whatever on eBay anymore. That's probably like a KEH ugly or as is. So it's all gone to hell, and they've inflated prices, and I just avoid them, generally speaking. Instead of buying from Japan-based sellers on eBay, I usually just go straight to Jauce.com, JAUCE.com, and I buy directly from Yahoo Auctions Japan instead of going through eBay. A lot of the same items are on sale, and they generally don't inflate the prices for some reason. I don't know what's going on, but Jauce is really good. I like that. There's also a bunch of other small online shops like Etsy and Depop, where you can find cameras that were thrifted or got bought at estate sales. There are also used camera dealers like KEH and camera stores, but they're more reliable than eBay. And the proxy services like Japan Camera Hunter and a bunch of other places. There are forums that have classified sections, people selling cameras individually, person to person. Same thing on Facebook groups. And of course, there's the used section of brick and mortar camera shops. That's always nice because you can handle things yourself, or you can buy or order online, like B&H and Camera West and Midwest Photo Exchange. You can order things from their websites. Sometimes also camera repairmen, they have used items for sale. And also there are antique camera dealers like Pacific Rim Camera and Petrocla, who have good selections of working antique cameras. And if you're like looking at high-end stuff, sometimes they do have stuff for users. Tamarkin and Lights Photographica, sometimes they have stuff for users that's not just for the collectors, so it's worth looking at those. And lastly, some places have camera shows where people set up their tables with all the cameras that they are selling, and you have to pay like a cover charge, like $5 or something, to get in. But those are fun. If you do go to that, though, make sure you have cash in hand and don't get too, discombobulated at finding a camera. So, don't do something you're going to regret just because it's there. Let's see. What else? Okay. When you're looking for a camera, always go to eBay's completed item search and find out what a good price range is for a certain condition. Never go by what the buy it now price is, because that's usually way too high. Double check their returns policy, because you're definitely going to have to end up returning something. So you don't want to be stuck getting something that's broken and the seller doesn't accept returns. That's just BS. Also, as far as condition is concerned, always go for the one in best condition. Things that have been used a lot and that look terrible, they're gonna break down sooner, and they might have problems, like functional problems, that are just gonna make you hate the camera and not want to use it. And it might be like a complete money sink as far as how much you have to spend to get it repaired and get it working. So I always go for the one that's in the absolute best cosmetic condition, because they're usually the things that are in the best functional mechanical condition too. So as far as storage is concerned, this is important for electronic cameras. You want to ask the seller what the storage conditions were, because if something was left in a humid area, the things can the electronic components can go bad, and you won't be able to really tell from the outside. So moisture and temperature, that'll ruin the internals of a camera, even if the exterior looks fine. So always check for the storage conditions if you can. Ask about that. And also, like, when you're on eBay, go through a list of like whether there's haze in the lens, whether there's oil on it, what kind of dust is on it, etc., etc. I should probably make a video about that. All the a checklist of. Oh wait, that's in the next section. Yeah, whatever. Testing the camera, that's in the next section. Okay, you should ask about all the functional things when you're shopping, and then you should go through that checklist when you test out the camera where you get it. Anyhow, okay. One last thing when you're looking for a camera to buy it, ask for whether it's been CLA'd and by whom. If they have a receipt for it, that's even better. Yeah, it's important to know which repairman serviced the camera, because some are no good and some are really good. There's no standardized definition of what a CLA is, and there's no industry standards for what's required to call some sort of service a CLA. So it might be a complete waste of money, it might be completely amateurishly done, or it might be top-notch work. So always make sure to ask whether it's been CLA'd, how long ago, and who did it. If a certain famous specialist did it, like Don Goldberg or David Otis did it, then you're probably good to go. But if some random repair shop did it, or if it was done by the seller, you don't really know if that's a good CLA or not. Let's see. So what else? Okay. Step 5. Test your new camera. So this is when you double check whether all the things you asked about are actually true. So you want to do a preliminary check. Check the light seals and the mirror foam in SLR, if you've got an SLR. You want to check all the feels and the knobs and how crisp they are. You want to check all the dials, the rings. You want to check the prism to make sure it's not desilvering or separating. Just make sure there are no blobs of desilvering, or there's no line of separation in the viewfinder. The edges might be corroding too. That happens a lot in certain old prism finders. If you got a rangefinder, you want to test the rangefinder alignment. Also check the battery compartment to make sure it's not corroded. Check you want to test the meter to make sure it's accurate. If you don't have your own handheld meter or something like that, you can always go outside on a sunny day and then use the sunny 16 rule to check your meter. And then to check the linearity, to make sure it's accurate outdoors as well as indoors. There are tests on how to do that too, so I'll put in links to that. And after you give the preliminary check, you want to shoot a test roll. Test all the shutter speeds. When you get the camera, make sure to check the 1 second speed on your shutter. That's the easiest way to see if the slow speed escapement is gummed up or not. What else? And okay, also when you shoot a test roll, that's when you'll find out if the focus is off, and if there are any light leaks or frame spacing issues. And on the lenses, you want to check the least shutter, whether they're oily and stuff. You want to make sure that they're fast and crisp and accurate. And also you want to double check the infinity focus and rangefinder adjustment. I'll put a link to check the procedure on how to do that. But generally speaking, you want to go outside, find something very, very far away, and then look through the viewfinder to make sure that the infinity focus is accurate. Let's see. And another thing that you want to check when you look at the test photos is to see whether there's like decentering on a lens. So sometimes the lens will be blurry on one side and sharp on the other. That's when you know that a lens has been dropped or something, and you're gonna have to send that back or get it repaired or get a partial refund to have that fixed. When you do the test roll, try to do the kind of photography that you want to do with it, just to see how it behaves in that situation. But you also want to back that up by shooting a test chart, because that'll show things that might be covered up by the situation that you're taking photos in. So I'll put a link in to a test chart that you should get a photo of. So yeah, let's see. What else? I think that's pretty much it. For my conclusion, that was one thing I wanted to say. It's this one quote by Nobuyoshi Araki, and he says, "If you want to change your photographs, you need to change cameras. Changing cameras means that your photographs will change. A really good camera has something I suppose you might describe as its own distinctive aura." So, think about that for a second. So, I'll repeat it. If you want to change your photographs, you need to change cameras. Changing cameras means that your photographs will change. A really good camera has something I suppose you might describe as its own distinctive aura. So, it's easy to interpret this in like a reductive, techno-deterministic way where the technology determines the outcomes. But the interpretation I want to stress is that you don't know how a camera will change your photographs. It might be unpredictable and unforeseen. Might not be what you expect. So, in that sense, that really emphasizes the aspect of chance. So, people are always finding new unintended uses for technology, and that might happen if you get a certain new type of camera. So, don't be locked into the whole, this kind of camera is the kind of camera you have to get to do this kind of photography. That's not necessarily how it'll work in the end. Even though I've laid out the whole process where you match your needs to the type of camera and stuff, that might not work at all. So yeah, it's good to know that it's getting your first camera is not the end. It's just the beginning. You'll end up getting other cameras, and you'll make your way through on your whole photographic journey. So it's just a matter of trial and error and finding out what works for you for a certain kind of photography, and getting bored and tired of what you're doing and looking for different kinds of cameras and different kinds of photographs that you could be taking. And sometimes the process is frustrating, but that's inevitable. So that's just the way it is. I mean, your needs and interests, they're going to evolve. And, as far as getting your first camera is concerned, it's just a way to get started, like I said in the beginning, just to get your foot in the door. So, find a camera. You don't necessarily need to spend as much time as I've said figuring out the right camera for you, or or like you don't have to get something that's in the canon of the great cameras, the popular cameras, or anything like that. Because generally speaking, the prices on those are kind of inflated because people are sort of unsure about the whole process, and they want to avoid as many uncertainties as they can. But that also means that they end up having to spend more money than they really have to, and spending money on overpriced cameras when there are really a lot of options that are just as good, maybe even better, and cost less. So there are a lot of cameras out there that are not Canon 8E1s or Pentax K1000s or Leica M6s and things like that are less popular but just as good, probably cost less, probably just as reliable, and just as nice to own and use and have a good feel to them, and have a good looking design and everything. So don't go along with conventional wisdom. Try things out. Most cameras out there are actually really nice, even if they're not super popular. A lot of cameras even have undeserved reputations for being unreliable. But yeah. Anyway, that's all I have to say. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll try to answer them. And anyway, yeah. Hope you got something out of the guide, the overly complicated 5-step guide to buying cameras in a post-COVID-19 world. Yeah. So have a nice week, and thanks for watching. Bye.